Kia ora e te iwi, nau mai hara mai, and welcome to this evening's Centre for Health Hauora Kōrero. Ko Natalie Hilterman tōku ingoa, and I'm excited about tonight's topic about reframing health. The majority of us, myself included, when we think about health and well-being, we kind of think about, well, from my perspective, if something's wrong with us right now. But if we think about the changes in our social environment, the way we work, the recent weather events around the mutu and the stresses that has put in our whānau in those regions, together with technology, we need to start reframing how we think about our health and well-being. So not just when we get sick. So tonight we have an amazing panel who'll be sharing their insights and their whakaaro on what that actually means for them. Generally, we open with a karakia or a whakatauki, but because I'm surrounded by ngāi te rangi whānau, I won't open with the te arawa karakia. So I'll open with the whakatauki whānau. And the whakatauki I'm going to open with is ka ora te whenua, ka ora te tangata, which means when the land is well, the people will be well. And I guess what this whakatauki means is when the land or the whenua is well, so are we in times of strife or turmoil, or even just to refresh yourself. Head to your maunga, head to your land. When you immerse yourself in nature, you can feel the energy and it just re-energizes you. And it provides that spiritual and emotional strength that you may need to get through hard times. It also recognizes the connection we have to a place and a way in which our well-being is drawn from the whenua. I thought that was a good way to start. And as we progress through the evening, if you have any specific pātai that you would like to ask, please send them through. You can either post them in the chat or you can send them by private message. We're covering all aspects. Now, let's kick off the evening with a bit of whakawhanaungatanga. And what we'll do is we'll go around and we'll just introduce everyone. And I think we'll start with Hannah. Kia ora, Hannah.
Kia ora whānau. Ko Hannah taku ingoa. I'm a clinical exercise physiologist here at the Centre for Health. Yep.
Kia ora, Hannah. Mere, do you want to go next, Kare?
Tēnā tātou, ko mau o te maunga, tauranga te moana, ko taki te meme mā tātua ngā waka, ko ngā tirangi nui me ngā tirangi ngā iwi. Ko Mere horo pāwhera tōku ingoa. Kia ora, my name is Mere, and I am a miri practitioner here at the Centre for Health. Tēnā tātou.
Oh, kia ora, Mere. Kerry, did you want to go next, Kare?
Kia ora whānau, ko tēnei he titahi uri o te tairāwhiti, ko Ngāti Parau, ko Ngāti Kahungunu ki te wairo nā iwi. Ko Kerry Manuel tōku ingoa. I am a client at the Centre for Health and just the general hoha to everyone here. But yeah, I'm excited to be on the panel tonight and share some of my whakaaro.
Oh, kia ora, Kerry. And Ange. Kia ora, Ange.
Kia ora koutou, ko Ange Palmer, taku ingoa. I am coming to you from Te Waipounamu. I live in a remote valley here down in the South Island, and I'm a medical herbalist. And I've been immersed in the world of wellbeing and health for a couple of decades.
You're looking pretty good if it's been that long, Ange. Kia ora whānau. So we're going to kick off and just, I'm going to get Hannah to just set the foundation for our kōrero tonight about, what does reframing health mean and what is the kaupapa for tonight, please, Hannah?
Cool. Well, to start with, we actually decided to Google the definition of health, which came up with quite a good finding. So according to Google, the definition of health is the absence of any illness, injury, or disease, which makes sense and sounds pretty good. Here at the Centre for Health, we have adopted and operationalised and live by a slightly different framework, the whare tapawhā model of hauora. So whare tapawhā takes into consideration not only our physical health, but also that of our mental or hinengaro, our wairua spiritual health, and also our whānau. And it kind of, the wharewha model, if you picture a whare, a house, and it has 4 walls, a roof, and it's standing on ground. So those 4 walls each represent one of those 4 different realms of your hauora. So one is your physical health, one is your mental health, one is your wairua, and the other is your whānau. And around that house, in order for it to stand stable, for those walls to be connected well, requires your whenua and your environment to also be working in symphony with everything to keep that whare standing. So what we look at is a model of hauora that, whilst it might be your physical health that is causing symptoms or distress or pain at the moment, it might also be that your emotional or mental health is also actually not doing so well as it could be. And so there might be some tools that we need to do to help support that wall of the whare in order to keep the physical, the tinana wall also stable. And it might be something that's completely unrelated to you. An environmental disaster has occurred that is requiring all of your energy, all of your emotional support, all of your everything. And that's what needs addressing before anything else can be looked after. So your hauora, or in our view, your health, is not just a physical construct. It's also all of these other different aspects that at varying times throughout our life, varying times throughout our week, sometimes even our day, all need to be addressed in different ways, and equally all need to be addressed at different levels as well. So that's what we look at. Everyone that walks through our door gets asked, what does good health mean to you? Because good health to everybody is different, and therefore what works for one person is not going to work for the next. And so everyone's health journey should be individualized to support their needs, that accounts for their hauora, their age, their stage of life, their whatever is going on around them, to make sure that they're fully supported and free of any negative influence that could be impacting on their life. So that to us is how we've reframed health, and hopefully how we help others to also see their health and their hauora.
So it's complex.
Yeah.
There's a lot
Very.
going on. There's a lot that we're going to have to unpack tonight. Kapai.
Oh yeah.
Thank you, Hannah.
I could have just said that. Yeah.
One patai I do get asked, so most of our whānau can understand the concept of te whare tapawhā when you talk about your mental health, when you talk about your physical health, and even kind of your spiritual, your religious, health and well-being. But can you just give us an example of what the whānau po means and how that's how that plays an impact in your overall health and well-being?
Yeah. So for certain people, that could literally relate to, I guess, the health and well-being of those that are closest to them. So literally their immediate family. But equally, we're humans. We like being connected to one another, and so it's also the health and well-being that those around us that then impacts on the health and well-being of ourselves. So kind of like that saying, if you spend time with like-minded people that are uplifting and positive and happy people, it rubs off on you eventually, and so can the opposite be said. So the health and well-being of yourself is also determined by those that you spend most time around, because you influence them, but they also significantly influence you as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Love that. So now we're going to get into a little bit of a kōrero around the health system. And we just want to kind of open up with the whakapapa of health. And I'm going to ask Mere to start off this kōrero, please, because she's got a beautiful way of framing this up. Mere? Just putting you on the spot here, Kari.
I think I'll go back to leaning into Hannah's kōrero about te whare tapawhā, and that each whare has its foundation, and that the environment it's built into, like some houses can be are built like on the coast, some are built in the ngaere, some are like all the environment that it's built in, that it requires different materials and things like that. So each whare, each individual whare built on its foundation is a part of its whakapapa. And when we look at te whare tapawha and holistic health, we're looking at that when someone comes through the door, we're looking at their whole self, and everything they bring with them. And it's about not just the person that's standing in front of you, but the whakapapa of their past, because whakapapa is all past, present, and future, all working at the same time. And if we consider the past, where they've come from, what they're bringing with them, and it's presented to us however it is at present, then it helps guide us through tailoring a healthcare plan to move forward. I'm not too sure about the health system itself. If I'm meant to be touching on that, it might be a kōrero for Kerry. But
Well, I love the finger pointing.
Holistic health in general, or te whare tapawha, that's the way that we view it. Or if anyone comes into for mirimiri, those are the things that are considered, is where they've come from, what they're bringing with them, how they present on the day, and a therapy that's tailored to them to help them move forward.
So what I'm hearing it's really individualized. It's not just coming in with an ailment, I've got a sore ankle or whatever. It's around that holistic view of where they've come from, what they've got now, and where they want to go in the future.
Yeah, it's looking at these are the symptoms that they're presenting, but what we're looking for is the cause, and that's where we go back through the holistic whakapapa of their health and well-being and how we move forward.
Awesome. Hannah, do you want to talk about kind of from there the health system? Because what we're trying to get to is kind of, this is where we are right now, right? And this is why we think a certain way. Why is it about our health?
Yeah, well, I think, like, first off, our health system is called the health system, and yet we engage with the health system when we need help. And it is incredibly effective at providing that help most of the time, for acute issues, for injuries, for illness management, for the curement of certain conditions or things like that. Our health system is fantastic at doing that, and we have exceptional support workers, healthcare doctors, nurses, specialists who have spent years studying and burnt out and lost a lot of sleep in order to get to where they are now, to provide the best evidence-based practice in terms of helping support us on certain health journeys when it comes to addressing immediate issues. However, what it doesn't really do so well is teach us to regain ownership of our own health journey, or in some ways help us recognize that our body is so damn complex and that some health issues don't just occur out of bad luck. Health issues or issues and concerns arise usually because of years of something that's gone on. There's certainly going to be a certain amount of genetic bad luck, and that's for sure. But there's a lot of things that we can prevent. And unfortunately, our health system is currently not geared up to help educate us in the tools that we need to prevent a lot of these issues. It's purely the ambulance at the bottom of the hill. And so we need to be able to source different resources, different educators, different tools to be able to put in place both a prevention plan, but also a management plan that helps us regain ownership of our health, and live the life that we want to, perhaps with some support from the medical system, but certainly that shouldn't be the only way that we help manage our health. there's
Oh,
actually a lot more that you can do. Yeah.
And it's not about, in tonight's kōrero, there's a place for the medical system.
Yeah.
This kōrero is not about saying that it isn't, that the other thing, that the kōrero is about more, what are the other aspects that we need to consider. Awesome. So, okay, so let's go around the virtual tepu and have a kōrero about what does reframing health mean to you. Ange, did you want to kick us off? Love picking on people.
So I guess we're just picking up on a couple of points there. I've been working in that kind of holistic model for a long time, and what I've really seen very clearly in a clinical sense is that when I work with somebody and I suggest that they take some herbs, we look at their nutrition, I want them to up their exercise, maybe cut down on, cut down 1 coffee a day from 3 to 2 or something like that. Test done, and then they come back for their follow-up a month or 2 later, and I'm like, oh, how are you going? And they're like, oh yeah, I cut down on my coffee, and I got more exercise, I've been taking the herbs. But what I find is that if there's one of those things that's missing, it's kind of like you don't quite make the progress. So from my experience, when you come at something from all of these angles at the same time, it's almost like the body then goes, now I've got what I need to move to a new level of well-being. But I've really seen that when you're coming from all these different angles, it's really important. And so for me, increasingly, I've also now adopted this kaupapa in my life and in my mahi called tiwai waka, which is all about connecting people back to the whenua in a very kind of real and practical way. And I'm seeing incredible people actually have the time to rest and reconnect and disconnect from the cyber world, and actually physically, in person, get back to the whenua. And it's been incredibly profound, completely profound for me.
Whānau, thanks Ange for that. We're going to pop in a few links that Ange has, the Tiwai Waka link that Ange has just spoken about, and another couple if you have a look in our DM links. What about you, Kerry?
Yeah, what does health reframing health look like? I suppose for me, just going back into the kōrero that everyone's had, it is multi-generational. That's sort of how we live, but it's back home. But understanding what happens with our tupuna, with my parents' generation, how they lived their health lifestyle, how we can improve on that. And then what we're exempling to our kids as well in our mokopuna. Luckily, I live in a place like Tauranga Moana where Pākeke are completely active in this community. You see them every time, and if you're one of those ones that struggle up the maunga and you get passed by the kuia, and she's not even puffing, she's having a full-on conversation with you, and you're like, oh, I can't speak. But that's when I look at people like that, I'm like, yeah, that's what I want to be doing. When I'm her age, that I want to be able to walk up maunga with my mokopuna. And so how do I do that? That's bigger. The health system can't help me do that. But places like the Centre for Health, people here can help me get the tools and resources necessary to be able to do that in my future. So yeah, that's what it looks like for me.
Can I just ask a patai, Kerry, in that, can you just give us a little bit of background in terms of what you were doing a while ago and that hikoi for you? Because that might frame up a little bit about where you're at right now and kind of implementing key strategies so that you can get up the maunga with your moko.
Yeah, I mean, talking about my parents' generation, they were ones who worked and worked and worked and worked and they didn't look after their health. Like I never saw my parents working out, or anyone from their generation. Back home in Wairoa, you saw the older ones maybe playing sports every now and then they were straight to the club rooms straight after. You know, that was the level of fitness and health lifestyle that they lived. And so when I became an adult, you know, I was following in those footsteps, because that was the example laid out for me. So I was a lawyer, and that's hard mahi, and there's a high expectation in that mahi that you work and you work and you work, and that's what I did. And so you work hard, party hard, work hard, party hard, and the health and fitness stuff just sort of gets left to the side. So yeah, I wasn't in the best health when I finished practice, and I needed to kickstart my own journey back to health and wellbeing. I was burnt out, and my tinana was really displaying a lot of the symptoms of burnout, but I didn't know what to do with it. You know, you need to sleep and then you get back up, and now you've got submissions for the court again, so you're up for another 3-4 days to do that. So yeah, it wasn't healthy at all. So yeah, that's something that places like the Centre for Health, especially for me, like people who example what they're telling you. It's not that they're just sitting there behind a desk telling you what you should do, how you should do it. They're actually providing the example as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Boy, Kari. Love it. Mere, how are you walking the talk?
I suppose I can speak to some of the mahi we've been doing in my own whānau. So we're lucky enough to still have some of the mātauranga, some of the knowledge of maramataka passed down through our whānau. And well, if you don't know what maramataka is, it's the lunar calendar. So what we've been doing in the last few years is we've been reviving some of the knowledge and practices around the lunar calendar. And long story short, so we use the lunar calendar to guide us in observing the environment, first and foremost. The environment, and so we've got like people that observe different things too. So for example, my sister she does a lot of the gardening. My mum does a lot of the observing because she's at home, and I do observing like my own patterns, cycles and behaviors. So that's pretty much all it is observing patterns, cycles and our own behaviors, but using the maramataka to guide us through that, to inform us in creating our own healthcare plan. And it's been amazing.
And understanding, right? Because you're kind of mapping, like you said, your behaviors against the lunar cycle, right?
Yeah, it's the lunar cycle that guides us, because we track the phases and learning to understand the ups and downs throughout the monthly cycle, because it's not just we don't just track it by month, we track it by year too, and the seasons, and that it's always changing. Like our own health, it's always changing, and as we go, we evolve our healthcare plan. And even just the way it gets us outside in the garden, it has us going to the moana and just spending time out in the taiao. And I think the biggest benefit for us as a whānau has been connection. So connection to our whenua, and it's been really important to us to reconnect ourselves to each other. And understanding the different roles that we play, and that naturally happens when you're all on the same kaupapa, that everyone's strengths start to shine, and we find that we've tapped into potential and all these different skills that we didn't realize we had, and learning new things all the time. because the paia was always changing. We're growing with it too. So it's been amazing for our health. And I think too, in regard to being a mirimiri practitioner, that it's my job to observe the well-being of people that come in looking for āwhina, or looking for support. So if I have my own systems in place to keep me well, then it gives me the strength to be able to hold space for people who are on their journey to health. Carry on.
That's awesome. Thank you, Kari. And Hannah, what about you? How do you walk the talk? What does reframing healthcare look to you, your healthcare?
Well, for me personally, it's an ongoing journey, and I'm incredibly fortunate to be surrounded by incredibly knowledgeable wahine and a couple of tāne as well, who provide their input and suggestions and recommendations and just tell me to sort my shit when I need to. So I'm incredibly lucky to have that. And I think from a practitioner perspective, I feel incredibly privileged in that I do work within this environment of these incredibly knowledgeable people who have knowledge within these really diverse areas. And then for myself to have also this knowledge within a medical area, in the sense that, like, for example, we're doing a lot of continuing education with some of our younger guys at the moment and talking around, you know, blood test results and medical results and how to interpret them. And so, you know, a person will come in and they've got their medical plan set out to be achieving X, Y, and Z based on various results. But then we can interpret it or interpret their blood test results from our perspective. And it's looking at things like, okay, what might be lacking in terms of nutrition? What is the role of stress and inflammation? How can that be impacting on some of these results? And it always comes back to literally what you said at the start, Nat, that our bodies are so bloody complex and nothing works alone. We have all of these different processes, different organs, different cells, everything, but not a single thing works on its own. There's always input, there's always connection from other things within our body. So like I had someone the other day who came in with their results and there was about 10 different things that were all not looking so flash. And she was like, oh gosh, I've got so much I need to work on. I was like, well, not really, actually. Do X, Y, and Z, and you're going to influence every single one of those measures. Because again, every single one of those X, Y, and Z things is impacting your whole physiology, your whole body, your tinana, also your hinengaro, your wairoa. You're going to feel better when you're doing it. It's getting you out into the whenua. You're going to have these systemic benefits. So it's, for me, I feel really privileged to be able to link those areas, to also work within an area that if I need that medical expert advice, I can pull on that. But equally, if it's something else that might be more related to rongoa, to nutrition, to wairoa, if there's something that I just can't click of what's going on, I've got these other incredible people that I can pull on as well. So I feel incredibly privileged to be able to do that and to work in that environment. And so in that realm, or in that context, reframing health is a continuously ongoing journey, and it's reframing it for every single person that comes in, because education and understanding what's going on for me is the most important thing that I can help someone to take away. Because if you understand what's actually going on, like even just explaining what your blood pressure is actually measuring, to some people makes so much sense. When you tell them the impact of your sleep, of what you eat, of the caffeine on your blood pressure, and they go, oh, so if I change this and that, my blood pressure might be better. Like, yep. I mean, that's something so simple. So yeah, so reframing health is, there's not a single answer for it, and for every single person it should be different. And it really comes down to that individual to figure out what health actually looks like for them, and what that journey needs to incorporate as well.
So it's a little bit about knowing your own body, knowing what's going on, environmental factors, stress, mahi, whānau, what Kerry was talking about in terms of learned behaviours with whānau growing up. We're so complex. That's why it's never one kind of cookie cutter plan for everyone, which is great for you guys. Keeps you on your toes.
Oh yeah, it makes it fun.
Ange, you must deal with a bunch of clients with stress related issues, burnout, tamia. What guidance are they looking for? What are the key? Oh, sorry.
Hi. So the first thing I'd say is one of the interesting things is that when someone comes to see me for the first time, I see them for 90 minutes. And so, you know, when I think about they get 10 minutes with a GP, it kind of just like, I mean, almost like, what's the point? Most of the people who, by the time they come and see me, they've been to the GP, they've tried the drugs, they've been to the specialist, you know, they've been down this long road and they're pretty desperate. And one of the questions which I typically always ask at some point in a consult is I say to them, and maybe the whānau out there listening might want to think about this, I say, I'm going to ask you a question. It's an important question. Deep in your core, are you exhausted? And the majority of time, there's a bit of a pause and then somebody will burst into tears, or they kind of look down and they're like, yeah. And bingo, the whole session then shifts for me. There's just so many of us who out. And in terms of blood tests, one of the things that I or iron stores, so many women, particularly women who are still menstruating, are walking around out there with iron levels down in your socks. And if your iron is low, you can't think, you can't function, you know, you're tired. But in terms of exhaustion, I think it's really important to realize that exhaustion sort of leads on this trajectory to burnout. And yes, feeling a bit exhausted and worn out is one thing, but when you actually burn out, you can't get out of bed in the morning, you can't function, you can't think, you can't make decisions. And typically what happens is that when we go through life and the stress kind of insidiously gets a bit higher and a bit higher and a bit higher as we go through life, we tend to fuel ourselves with caffeine, sugar. For some people, it's exercise, alcohol, or drama. So there are some people who there's always something going on because there has to be, because that's how they actually keep their adrenaline going and that's what's fueling them. And while we fuel ourselves with adrenaline, which all of these things promote, our underlying capacity or adrenal energy basically becomes increasingly depleted. And then one day, if something happens, like there's a big stress, and I can give you an example because I went through this in my early 30s when I was studying and working and I was a young parent. And in my case, I was involved in a house fire. The house burned down. I rescued a couple of kids out of it. And my adrenaline just went off the chart. And a few weeks later, I woke up one morning and I literally couldn't function. So I think it's really important to take it really seriously when you're starting to feel that I am exhausted. Maybe I'm a bit depressed. Maybe I have a sense of failure, not keep. Then, there's red flags there, and it's a really important time to actually reach out and ask for help. And I think that the biggest piece of advice that I can give is rest, rest, rest. And would urge you to listen to, and it's called Rest as Resistance. And basically the guts of it is that, you know, we live in this extractive culture that just kind of sucks the blood out of us because we need to work so hard to keep up and, you know, keep the money coming in and all of that. And we there's a lot of sleep deprivation, and the sort of the kaupapa of the Rest as Resistance is that the most radical thing we can do to push back against this hustle culture or grind culture that keeps us going is just to rest. And it's kind of like radical activism. And when I heard this podcast, I was just like, you know, I get this. This is amazing. So I think we've got the link there to put up somewhere, and yeah, just a great listen.
So, okay, so on that, a show of hands, who on this Zoe has burnt out? Wow, the majority of us.
Yeah.
It's not a good, that's not, admit it, I wish I was you. Do you know what, I burnt out twice last year. This is not, when we talk about reframing, and I think Ange just put the nail on the head, you know, stresses of life, of kids, of mahi, of recent weather events that are completely out of our control. They build up, they cause stress in our tinana, and we burn out for various reasons. So I think I love this kōrero about let's not wait till we get sick. Let's try and create strategies and think about our health and well-being before we get there. So that's what I'm really loving about this kōrero today. Wahine mā.
And I think, sorry, Nat, just to add to what Andrew was saying as well, like I think also we live in this time at the moment where everyone expects a result or a diagnosis or they expect something now. And like we're seeing it in the centre, people coming in with all these really complex symptoms, and they've been through the medical system and nothing's been diagnosed. They're effectively perfectly fine, and yet they're living with these really debilitating symptoms, and there's no other rhyme nor reason for it. And obviously we start the kōrero around stress, and we've got tools that we can use to actually look at a physiological response to stress, and sure enough it shows they've got a pretty exaggerated response, or they're on the verge of burnout or something like that. But unfortunately, until we change our mindset that actually what we do day in and day out is negatively impacting on our health and on our hauora, we're never going to accept that actually what we need to do is going to require us to change our routine or change our behavior or our lifestyle. We want a pill, we want something that's going to change it for us, but in actual fact we are doing it to ourselves. Not in all cases, and it's far more complex than what I've just said, but it often, in order to really truly impact your health, requires small but frequent changes every single day. You don't need to quit your job, you don't need to go on a 6-month holiday. I mean, that would be lovely. But yeah, and I mean, a couple of you guys can attest to how good that is. But you know, for people that also are in this rat race in terms of their careers, it's really hard when you're trying to achieve something and stay ahead of something and achieve a new position or a career progression, to actually acknowledge that if I don't do something for myself now, I'm not going to be able to enjoy this in 10 years' time. It's really hard to change your frame of thinking, but it's also, you don't have to stop everything. Literally by just engaging with a couple of small things every day, whether that's just actually working on your breathing, drinking more water, stop eating that shit food, you know, little things that actually will have a really good impact on you, allow you to keep going with what you're doing, but with you acknowledging that actually you need this opportunity to recover. You need to start engaging with your relaxation or parasympathetic system to help you keep going. I think that's really important. And I think we all need to realize that we've literally been running a marathon all day, every day for the last several years. Time to give our bodies a break. Yeah.
So someone wise once said to me, only you can make the changes for yourself. I think that's what you're trying to say too, Hannah, is that we at the centre can provide, and everyone on this Zoe can provide a million different strategies for whānau to support their hauora, but it's up to them to actually implement it and to do it and to make those small changes. So I love that. So on that note, whose responsibility is it to live a healthy lifestyle? Who wants to go first? Mary, you're laughing the most.
I think I'll speak to more like the way that we work in the centre, and the way that we, like Hannah said, like we don't diagnose it or anything like that, but what we do is we work with whānau to inform them about what's going on, well, the clinical stuff, and the when it comes to miri, it's the emotional and the wider stuff. So it's sort of getting clarification around what's happening, and going into a space where you can acknowledge that, and accept that you've come to this place, whether that still be healthy, but how can you make that better? Or if you have come to a place of burnout, it's acknowledging, going back to that whakapapa kōrero again, is how you've come to this state. And then once you get through the acknowledging that and accepting that, then it helps us to move forward. But once you go into that state of acknowledging what it is and accepting it for what it is, it's like a different, like you've ignited a passion in someone to actually take responsibility for their health. And I think that's the amazing thing. Well, the thing that I really love about working at the centre is seeing that spark in clients, or they have that light bulb moment of, oh, actually, all I have to do is these little things. I understand this is how I've come to this state. But it's just these little steps that I have to take. But I think the main thing is allowing them to come to that conclusion of, oh, okay, actually I can do this. And they start to decide on their own that actually I want to take responsibility for my health and my well-being. And eventually it flourishes. And their cup spills over to their whānau too. So it's up to everyone, in my opinion, to help each other in their journey to health and well-being.
Oh, lady. Kerry? Here.
Yeah, how can I follow that? I think just for me, the things that I've learned is, even though, so I did some drastic changes. Firstly, figured out that I have lactose intolerance and don't process gluten well. So I cut those from my diet, and the change was just so fast. I didn't want to be allergic to gluten and dairy because they're so nice, but that's the reality. My tinana doesn't like them, and but what I found was then after I cut those, I was still doing other things, and my body was still not really, being as healthy as it could be. And the problem that I have as a previous lawyer is that I get on Google and I have a look at everything and I get all this information and I'm like, I'm smart enough to know what that means. When I'm really, I can understand what it means, how that affects me and how I can best implement some of these changes. I don't have that skill. And that's where the Centre for Health comes in. And Hannah and Mary have both spoken about those small bites, that drinking a bit more water, that sleeping a bit more better. Are you aware or even of how you're sleeping, how long you're sleeping? What are your habits in relation to that? So, yeah, it's, you get so far on the journey and you've got to pivot sometimes. Don't give up is what I'd say to our whānau. Just because you got to change it up doesn't mean you should give up. And yeah, it is definitely partly our responsibility. We have all these other responsibilities that we have on our shoulders as well. And what tends to happen is our task list gets longer and longer and our own priorities change. And sometimes our health doesn't stay at the number one priority, and it shifts and it shifts and it shifts. This happened to me recently, and I had to come in to book an appointment with Hannah. So that was in my calendar so that I knew that I was coming back to centre, because I was drifting away a little bit. But once, and that happens, life happens, but you just have to keep on top of yourself. Have the kōrero with your whānau. I'm not feeling well tonight. I'm not going to cook dinner. Like, I need you fellas to clean. I need you. I'm out. I need to tap out for a little bit. I need to go to bed. I need to sleep. Or I need to go away. I need a holiday, a 6-month holiday.
6 months.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah. Or you can be like me and just turn up one day, I'm quitting my job. I'm taking a year off to do te reo. Those sorts of things, big changes that can have just a huge impact on you. But it is about your priorities, where you're at in life and the other responsibilities you have. We're all busy, but you can do it whānau, honestly. The Centre for Health, tauranga. Give them a call.
Biggest fan, I love it. Can I pick up on something that Kerry said? And I tautoko everything, including this fact that health is definitely becoming increasingly complex, and often people have what I call a sort of a psycho-neuro-immuno complex. So people, there's kind of some mental health issues, there's maybe some immune stuff going on, there's inflammation. It's tricky, it really is tricky. But yeah, it's a really interesting point, the internet. So a daughter of a friend of mine has had a sort of a fatigue thing going on for quite some time, and she recently had some tests done, and she has a particular virus in her body, and it's not actually a virus, it's a protozoa, Lyme, and now her whole focus, she's on her laptop all day long researching and looking at programs and products and all over the world. And I just would caution us all that it's just a minefield out there. There's all sorts of stuff on offer, and it's just like you can run around like a headless chicken trying to figure out what to do and where to go. And you can also spend a lot of money if you kind of get sucked into things. Not necessarily that you're sucked into them, but you'll have, oh, my friend tried this, she got it from the health shop, she said it was good, so I'm going to do it too. So it's just a caution that there's obviously lots of really positives about having the internet out there, and we can learn and we can become more educated, but it's a lot of time when if we actually went and put our put a little bit of that trust into a health professional like these wonderful women, that actually we could then get off our computer and get out and get onto the whenua, go for a walk, do some good things for ourselves. So it's something that I'm seeing a lot of people self-diagnosing and just wasting a lot of precious energy on kind of whittling away hours on the internet trying to figure it out for themselves.
I think there's a couple of things there with technology though, don't you think, Ange? There's the self-diagnosing, but also the amount of time we're spending on technology and the societal pressures potentially that we're seeing on technology. Like the amount of time we're on our phones or on our tablets has just skyrocketed over the last few years. Do you have any whakaaro around that and the impact on our health and well-being from that aspect?
And I also think it's absolutely terrifying, and that's why what I've come to now is I live in this very remote wilderness location, and I have groups of people who come to the whare, and it's owned by a charitable trust, and they come and we encourage them not to connect, and actually I tend not to give them the password unless they really need it, and I give them that experience of switching off and tapping into Papa Tuanuku and getting into the river and having some good food and getting their hands in the garden and talking to the horse and walking and, you know, and being very close to the ngahere where, you know, that's for me as a practitioner, that's where I've come to after 20 years of being a clinician. I'm now like, you know what? Come out here, people, you know, this is what we need. We just want people to really get out of that cyberspace and get into the real world. And that's the Tiwai Waka kaupapa, you know, that Papa Tuanuku is the mother. We're part of this whole web, and we have a role to look after her so that she may look after us. And if you want to know more, it originated from up your way.
Tauranga moana. Did you want to, we've only got a few more minutes, but did you just want to quickly outline Te Waiwaka, Ange, and what that is? So we do have the link in the DMs, whānau, but we've spoken a little bit about how you've got the whare there, but did you want to have a quick kōrero about Te Waiwaka?
So Te Waiwaka is kind of a kaupapa that kind of somewhat dropped out of the sky. That's the short story that Pa McGowan, who's quite a well-established rongoa practitioner and teacher, and it kind of came to him, and he's connected to the Whanganui River. That's the it has its own whakapapa, and he has basically put it into a little booklet, and now is kind of spreading the Te Waiwaka message. And Te Waiwaka is the Pi Waka Waka in the Whanganui River dialect, is my understanding, the fantail eye. So she's a very ubiquitous little bird, and she's kind of quiet, but she's flits around, and she's kind of the symbol of carrying this kaupapa forward. And there are basically 6 principles, and the principles are that that Papa Tuanuku is the mother, that we're part of that web of life, and that we need to care for the Māori, and that we also need to care for the tiniest creatures, and that includes, you know, the microorganisms both within the soil and the whenua, and also in ourselves, in our gut. And for me, it's just a little framework. It just gives some nice guiding principles, and I think it's really useful to have that in life, have some principles that help us just have little signposts along the way. And there's lots of models and different ways of doing that. And Te Waiwaka is one of them, which just, when I heard about Te Waiwaka, it just completely resonated with me. I was like, yep, that's who I am, that's what I believe, and now I'm sharing that with people far and wide.
Love it. Awesome, thanks, Ange. Okay, and to wrap up whānau, what we're going to do now, we'd just like to close our kōrero with, again, going around everyone. So I'm going to pick on every single one of you, so make sure you've got something ready. But what is your, key piece of advice for whānau to take away from this kōrero? If you could empower them to support and really focus on their own hauora, what would it be? I'm going to choose Hannah last. So what about you, Kerry?
I think it would be to find your people, find your support people, kōrero, talk about what's going on with you. That's really important. You know, I've talked about the Centre for Health and how they've helped me. I've also got my own, my partner and my friends who we have these sorts of conversations around what is going on with our health. We have check-ins with each other, and yeah, that's really important. So yeah, find your community whānau.
Love it. Mere?
I was going to talk a little bit about what Kerry said, but
That's usually what Hannah does. She'll do about 5.
well, then maybe make time to figure out what health looks like to you. And then when you figure that out, then what Kerry said, pull in your support people, pull in your community, pull in your whānau to help you get to whatever health looks like to you.
You guys. Ange?
I would say go to the whenua, you know, go to the awa on a regular basis, often take your shoes off and spend some time and really just stop and look and observe, feel, see, hear, smell, just really tune in to that natural environment around you, and you can't go wrong. You just can't go wrong. So good.
Love it, Ange. Love it. Hannah. What do you got?
Yeah. So 100% what you've all said. But my 2 big ones is knowledge is power and awareness is key. So the more that you understand about what is going on within yourself, then the better choices you can make. And that's not Googling things, that's other things. But also awareness is key. And you can only be truly aware of what is going on when you can actually slow down. So exactly what Ange said, you know, actually connect with the whenua, spend a moment outside without your phone and actually just look around. Because when we slow down, our body starts to tell us things, and hopefully you will listen. So yeah, surround yourself with people you can trust, engage with people for whom has knowledge that is trustworthy, and just be aware of yourself. Yeah.
Oh, we've got such a wise panel tonight, whānau. So I hope everyone who's online tonight has enjoyed this kōrero as much as me. I think it's incredibly important to kind of, we call it reframing, but it's a shift in how we view our health and hauora. So I hope you were able to take away some wee gems tonight, and we look forward to seeing you next month, whānau mā, for our next hauora kōrero. Pō mare e.